with the organisers of this dinner, bringing together businesses and the Chinese leadership then, an incredible opportunity and an incredible meeting, I suppose. Give us your top takeaways, I suppose, from the way that the day and the evening events carried out.
Well, it was more than just businesses at our dinner. It was NGO heads. It was people who Xi Jinping had dealt with in Iowa when he came here in 1985. It was members of the Flying Tigers, which was the group that helped fight with the Chinese against the Japanese. And he did that in order to establish a connection between China and the United States, a people-to-people connection. And the thrust of his speech at our dinner was people-to-people relations of the foundation of the U.S.-China relations, and we need to fight to restore them. He talked about increasing flights. He talked about increasing visas. He talked about doing things which allow for the movement of people between the United States and China. He talked about, and I had not heard this previous to the dinner, he talked about having 50,000 American students coming to China over the next, they're inviting 50,000 American students to come to China over the next 5 years. Bear that in mind today. Post-pandemic, we only have about 400 American students studying in China. So that's an enormous increase and a way to build the next generation of China scholars in the United States.
But and Stephen, of course, we heard from the US President.
Yeah.
Sure. And we heard from the US President Joe Biden saying these were some of the most productive talks he's had with his Chinese counterpart. I have to ask you, though, Stephen, just between us, you must have had your head in your hands when Biden reiterated the dictator comment.
Well, I think the outcomes of the discussions far outweighed any comments. That we've seen progress. You know, the communications mill to mill is important because we've seen Chinese and U.S. planes 10 yards apart. That is so dangerous. And when our militaries aren't communicating, that increases the risks. So this is going to be at the operational level. So that should be allow the two sides to basically de-risk. So that was very important. The fentanyl decision that the Chinese will restrict the exports of precursors to fentanyl is a huge deal. That's going to save American lives. And if you think about it, those who say we shouldn't be talking to the Chinese, we're talking to the Chinese, and the result of that is we're going to save American lives. And so many American families have been affected by the fentanyl epidemic, and people have died. So that's a huge deal. Agreement to work together.
That's a huge deal. Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
There's clearly progress has been made then, Stephen. I just want to ask you about, from a business perspective, and at the National Committee on US-China Relations, I'm sure you keep close eyes on these kinds of statistics, but we've seen foreign direct investments into China really fall in recent times, given all of the concerns, the geopolitical concerns and other concerns, and some of the realities of the Chinese economy, no doubt, playing into this as well. I wonder if you see it, are you expecting FDI into China to pick up? Are US companies going to invest more in China as a result of better relations?
I think better relations will improve the business climate. And what I think President Xi did in this speech is attempt to reach out to U.S. businesses and say, we are prepared to be constructive. Now, there weren't specifics in it, so we don't know what that exactly means, but we want to partner with the United States. We don't want to confront the United States. And the people in the room kind of took that to mean things are going to improve. There's recognition. This seemed to me recognition on the part of the Chinese leadership that the drop in FDI is partly based upon Chinese policies. And this was a signal from the top to begin to do it better and attract FDI. Is FDI going to turn around in the next 3 months? No. But does this lay a foundation for companies beginning to think about continuing, increasing their investment in China? It does.
Stephen, what are you and the National Committee going to be watching for in the days, weeks and months ahead in terms of seeing how that rhetoric is actually implemented on the ground to improve the business environment? What are some of the indicators you're going to be watching for?
Well, that's exactly the right question. It's going to be, how is this implemented? what actions are the Chinese going to take to allow for free repatriation of data for companies that are working in China? How are the national security laws going to be enforced? Are we going to have a level playing field between foreign companies and Chinese companies? So the rhetoric is certainly right, but what we're going to need to see is how they're implemented on the ground. So over the next 6 months, we're going to see this. On the fentanyl, which I think is very important, we've already seen the Chinese begin to crack down on businesses that were exporting the precursors to fentanyl. So even before this agreement was announced, they began to implement it. And that, to me, is very positive. We need to see that in the business area also.
If the drop in FDI, Stephen, has been partly driven by Chinese policy, what are the policy changes that you and the businesses you talk to would like to see?
Clarity, transparency, equal enforcement, when there is enforcement, understanding of why there is enforcement, fair enforcement of the anti-monopoly laws. So if there is an application to do a deal which is approved by every government in the world and not by China, China needs to explain why that has happened.